Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Jorge Espinoza. It's a great pleasure to be with you today in our second graded activity of language testing, where today we're going to be addressing a very interesting topic. Please receive a very warm welcome. So the topic for today is explain the differences between language testing and language assessment. Okay, so let's get started right away. In order for us to address this topic, I would like you to understand what language is and how important it is. So language is an important tool that every human uses as a specific common means of expression, communication, and conveyance of different thoughts, okay? It's also important as a way of imparting knowledge, instruction, and teaching, as well as it forges friendship, cultural ties, and economic relationships. That's how important language is. Without language, communication would be impossible, even for a minute, if we would eliminate all kinds of language, all computers, and global communication and internet will simply crash. And that happened about a couple weeks ago with a couple of platforms, very popular social platforms. The damage will be catastrophic. Now I would like to highlight the following example. Even the effects on the human body will be quite drastic. What do I mean with this? So I would like to highlight it in the following example. Imagine one long minute where the brain is completely blank, okay? You cannot think, you cannot move, as the brain needs to communicate to other parts of the body because you cannot take any actions. That is impossible. Imagine such a plain minute. That 1 minute is unimaginable, okay? Because you wouldn't be able to connect. The brain wouldn't be able to connect. So it's the same thing with language. That's the importance of language. Language acts as a bridge to connect with other people, with our society and the whole world in general. So that is the importance of language, which is why learning a different language gave us the ability to communicate in various environments. Knowing a language can tell us many aspects about the individual's culture. Language is something that one can learn from parents and teachers. So here I highlighted two examples. Do you come from a big family? Yes, I can understand you very clearly, right? That's the importance of language. So now I would like to answer the question number one. What is language teaching? Language teaching involves the process of sharing ideas, knowledge, skills, and attitudes between the teacher and the learner. In a classroom, the way and manner how the teacher can pass across the ideas, skills, and knowledge goes a long way in helping learners, okay? The teaching and learning process is organized in the form of lessons taught, learned systematically, okay? Vocal communication mostly use gestures, and materials described as teaching aids such as tasks, maps, pictures, audio recordings, etc. They are also used to enhance and reinforce the understanding of a language teaching class. Also, exposure to certain language in a suitable environment is the key point in the language teaching learning process, okay? So this is something very important, and I want to highlight that the exposure to certain language in a suitable environment, okay, that's really important in order for you to develop your language learning process, okay? Language is meant for communication. Merely knowing a language is not sufficient if it's not used in day-to-day life. The use of language for different purposes is another key point in learning language. So basically, it's not just enough just to know the language. You need to practice it. You need to speak as much as you can, practice as much as you can. And when it comes to language teaching, we use the following system: content, what we say, word meanings, vocabulary, form, how we say it, sentence structure, grammar, word endings, and how we use it, why we say it, conversation, social rules, matching language to the situation, okay? Something else I want to highlight is, something else that I want to add to this is, it is primordial, okay, for a language teacher to know the different task types that can be used to create good conditions for language learning. In addition to the direct teaching language, the teacher should also consider the conditions that are extremely important when teaching a language, okay? Every teacher should know these conditions before teaching a language, which is the learner should understand what is being said. They meet and notice some language material beyond their present level. They are interested in what's being said and the purpose for which it is said, and they do not feel under stress. Okay, to accomplish these goals, the English teacher should know at least 10 different techniques, okay? And the things that you have to, by knowing these techniques, you will have variety in your class. You will enable the necessary repetition by language without students getting bored. And you will have to choose the appropriate teachings to tailor the teaching in your class. But also, the English teacher should ask himself, is it a good technique? a good technique, it is good if learning activities, if learning happens, learners have to think to do it. It can be adapted to any level. A small amount of teacher preparation results in a lot of learning activity, and it is fun, okay? Also, how effective is this technique, okay? You have to ask yourself as a teacher, how will the language items learned today help with tomorrow's language? Is the information presented in the activity useful? How much control do the learners have over their learning? Okay, and I presented some examples of classification of techniques. We have individual, combining, exchange, cooperating, superior, and inferior, okay? Classification of techniques, okay? Also, another important thing when it comes to language teaching is varying techniques. When you vary the techniques, you can do it in the following ways. You can change roles, you can change the outcome, you can change the procedure, or you can introduce a challenge, and that would make your class much more interesting in your language teaching class, okay? You can also split the information if you need to. Most techniques require the teacher to adapt material or to make exercises to accompany it. This is a particular true for techniques that can be used over and over again, okay? Usually the first attempts are not a great success, but little practice results in a high level of skill. So the more practice you do, the more use you give it to your techniques, you will get the most of your language teaching class, okay? So now I'm gonna go with language assessment. What is language assessment? Language assessment refers to the act of collecting information and making judgments about language learners' knowledge and a language and ability to use it, okay? Language assessment, or also some authors call it also language testing, is a field of study belonging to the umbrella of applied linguistics, such a beautiful umbrella. And I wanted to add a small clarification between language assessment and language testing, that a test is a smaller part of the assessment intending to measure the respondent's knowledge or other abilities. It's a very important process after working or learning time, okay? For the ones that are confused between language testing and language assessment. So the test is a smaller part of the assessment, okay? Assessment is also one of the most important aspects of language teaching and learning. Assessment has two main purposes: to make summative evaluations and to make provisional instruction, to provide instructional feedback to help learners progress, okay? Both summative and formative assessments can be formal or informal. An informal assessment provides feedback from peers and others, and in the formal provides information against a standard of how the student is progressing in specific areas. Depending on the stakes, everyone can be involved in assessment: peers, teachers, administrators, and external constituents. However, teachers, as immediate catalysts of the learning process, should be particularly involved and well-informed about assessment practices, okay? That's something really important that you have to keep in mind, okay? So now, I would like to present you the types of assessment. The types, we have quite a variety of assessments. We have informal assessment, we have formal assessment, formative assessment, summative assessment, non-referred tests, and criterion reference tests, okay? Those are the types of assessments. So now, for the last question, how do language teaching and language assessment inform each other? Teaching and assessment are so closely interrelated that it's virtually impossible to work with either field without being constantly concerned with the other, okay? So they are connected, they work as a team, they are interrelated. The reciprocity of the relationship between the fields of assessment and teaching has made a headway in both fields. So they help each other, they support each other. Even though language teaching and language assessment have different purposes, they inform each other. Even though they have different purposes, they complement each other, which is a beautiful process. Language teaching informs classroom-based language assessment in two substantial ways, okay? First, the way you define the areas of language ability you want to assess will be based on the content or learning objectives of language instructions, the syllabus, the teaching materials, and the teaching tasks in which you engage your students. And the second, the kinds of assessment tasks you will use generally will be based on the kinds of teaching learning tasks you use in the classroom. Assessment can also inform teaching. The information you obtain from the assessment can help you make specific changes in the way you teach, and also the areas of content you may need to review or emphasize. This is something really beautiful that I want to highlight. The information you obtain from assessments can help you make specific changes in the way you teach, and also in the areas of content you may need to review or emphasize. So that's the importance of assessment, okay? Now, the way we integrate in teaching and assessment is the use of portfolios and scoring rubrics, okay? Many first and second language instructions use portfolios, for example, to provide opportunities for students to show samples of their academic work and its development in a portfolio. Okay, for example, in the language classroom, this technique is very valuable because the students are empowered to make decisions about which samples of their work to include, and also to write reflective comments about why they choose to include certain examples of their work, and judgments about their own skill development over the course of the academic term. So here the students will be able to make decisions and judgments about their own work and progress. And as far as rubrics goes, especially those developed in cooperatively between the instructor and the students, are the means of sharing the power invested in the instruction with the students, okay? And I just would like to highlight, present an example of a rubric. Here's an example of how connect language teaching and language assessment in the following rubric. Here's the rubric of evaluating an essay. As you can see, I evaluated in the scale from 1 to 5, and they have different questions where the students will have to, will be aware before writing their essay, and they will know, they will have to put in practice their language learning ability and how to put that in practice based on this rubric that I have prepared for them, okay? And to finalize my presentation, I wanted to say that there are some similarities and differences between language testing and language assessment. Both of them use their teacher as students. Both of them engage in tasks that require them to use language, okay, as far as similarities and differences. Teacher presents learning tasks, whereas language assessment presents assessment tasks, okay? Also, in the purpose of the tasks in language teaching, they promote and facilitate learning, and they enhance learning, linguistic, cognitive, emotional, and social development, whereas in language assessment, they collect samples of students' performance, okay? So, as a conclusion, school improvement and academic achievement are strongly influenced by the school's ability to use correct language teaching and language assessment. So we, as teachers, are responsible for building, promoting, and providing good teaching standards and assessment that produce reliable, formative, and summative data so that they will be the pillars in the academic information of each student's learning experiences. Okay, so we have that big responsibility as teachers, okay, that we need to keep in mind if we want to have success in our teacher career and process, okay? Well, it's been a pleasure to be with you guys today. I hope that you guys like my video, and I look forward to see you in our future tasks, okay? Have yourselves a great day, great afternoon, and bye for now.